I always had a fear of going to hell. Basically, growing up, I was taught really good morals and stuff, and I was afraid of doing the wrong things and going to hell, because I thought that whether I went to heaven or hell was based on my performance. So I always tried really hard to be a good girl. As time went on, though, I started to make bad choices from my insecurity and my fear, and becoming rebellious, so that being a good girl really didn't last all that long. Growing up was really hard for me because my dad was an alcoholic, and so you know, my mom and dad fought all the time, and so that was really difficult. He was very emotionally abusive to my mom, and then also sometimes physically abusive to her as well as to us kids, and so that just created a real spirit of fear and insecurity in me. We were a very religious family. We were, I was brought up very strict, you know, to go to church every Sunday, but in the way I was taught in my religion, it's just, I always had the idea that if you go to church, you go to heaven, you know, so it was all that. So, and my concept of God was kind of my concept of my dad was, if you get out of line, you get punished, you know, and so I had a fearful concept of God, and he seemed very, very far away. But I always had something in me that I wanted to connect with him somehow. And I think that was the most difficult part, is that I wanted to connect with him, and I wanted to please him, and I didn't know how. I didn't have the power. And that was such a I guess a point of real tension in my life, because I just, how do I please that big God that's so far away, you know? I just felt so powerless to get to that point of pleasing God, and you know, I think looking around me and my family, though they tried, they really did try to give us a good life, it was more of, you know, just things around me weren't adding up. And so in high school, I think that's when I really started getting in the wrong crowd and make some really bad choices, is when I just said, I can't do it, and I'm done trying. You know, there was still that little part of me that cared, but things were just so out of control, I think, at that point. I kind of just went with it. It's like, I just can't do it anymore, and I'm done. You know, one of the big times was when my boyfriend and I in high school, we had gotten into a sexual relationship, and I knew that that was wrong. And I remember just fighting with God on it, knowing, you know, I know this is the wrong thing that I'm doing, and I just can't get myself out of the situation. I don't seem to have the control, or, you know, not putting myself in the right places at the right time. And so I remember at that point too, I just said, I'm done trying. To me, I just kind of turned my back on God and said, I can't do it anymore, and I'll worry about you later. And I literally told God that I was going to wait until I got married to get serious about him, because, you know, I recognized it as in that point in my life, the peer pressure was so much, and my desire to please my friends and be a part of my whole social group was more important than God. And so I literally really just turned my back and said, you know, not now, God. I'll deal with you later. Shortly after that, I became pregnant. And so it wasn't long after that Dave and myself decided to get married. And so at that point, you know, once we had gotten married, we had been friends beforehand, but then we quickly became enemies in our marriage, and we fought all the time. At 18, I thought that I knew everything. You know, I had the world by the bootstraps or whatever, and here we're married, and both of us were very immature. He was 19 and I was 18, and so we just really, really, really struggled. And that just became such a painful thing, because when I turned my back on God, I pretty much, Dave had to be everything that God was supposed to be to me, you know, and for us to not have that work out, that really, really deeply hurt. And I was extremely lonely and extremely hurt over that. Not to mention that I had lost all my friends during that time because they had no children, but I did. And I was just alone. I had nothing to lean on. And so in all of that, I developed an eating disorder. And that, because my life was so out of control at that point, that was the one thing I could control. And it seems really odd, but at the time it made sense. And I remember thinking too that if I was just thin enough, everything would be okay. I mean, why, you know, you could actually think that, but when you're, I don't know, I just always had the idea that it was very important to be thin and pretty, you know, and so I just thought in my mind, if I was thin enough, and everything would be okay. So I ended up not eating. I would eat like a banana a day for a long time, and I lost a lot of weight, and I felt good though, because I felt like I had some control. So there was some, you know, good feeling to that in a weird kind of way. But then as time went on, I thought I was pregnant again, and so I started eating, and that became the hardest point for me because I was out of control. I started eating and I was just like an alcoholic. I couldn't control what I was doing. It controlled me. And the hard thing about that was that I kept it to myself. I didn't tell anybody for a long time. And when you keep things to yourself, I've realized it just has more power over you. And I struggled with that for a long time, and that became excruciating. After some time, my mom had suggested that I watch the 700 Club, and she just kind of started watching it, and I had never watched it before, but I turned the 700 Club on, and I heard someone talk about a personal relationship with Jesus. And that's what I wanted. You know, I just knew that's what I've been looking for all my life. And so I surrendered my life to Jesus right then and there. I never knew I could have a personal relationship with him. And that began to change things for me. I'd like to say that, you know, I was immediately changed, but it was a gradual process. It really wasn't until we got into a good Bible-believing church where I actually began to heal. As time had gone on, I was able to let a lot of those actions go with the food, but I still had a lot of deep things inside that needed to be healed from all of that. When I was able to give up the things that I held so dear and held so tightly to, that's when he would come in and begin to work his grace and his power in my life. And I've learned that the more I let go and let God take it, the more successful things turn out. Obviously, you know, when you try to do things your own way, I'm not God, and I made a lot of mistakes, but to allow God to take that, anything that I held so dear, and just makes all the difference, because he does. He works things out in his way, and he has all the answers, so I just need to trust him. Every once in a while I'll struggle with some of the old stuff that comes back, but I'm not a depressed person like I used to be. And when I do have issues that come up once in a while, they're very short-lived, and because I turn to God, and he just gives me that power to overcome. So I'm an overcomer.